I'm across town from you, Tom. If you're bored, you can come over here. But you can't hear that. Hmm.
All right, 50 seconds. All right, hello everyone. So welcome to the November 22nd meeting of the Alberta Clayoquot District Board of Directors. Now we should first start off with a recognition that we're conducting our business primarily on the territories of the Hoopadgesit and Tashant First Nations, but also that since we're having our meeting in a hybrid format, we're coming to you live from plenty of other new channels and perhaps even Coast Salish and maybe even Kwakwaka'wakw territory as well. Larry may be in Victoria, and if he is, that's the Hungan speaking people. And with that, we'll acknowledge and respect that fact. So we are meeting today in a hybrid format, which means we do have people here in the boardroom as well as people online. So we will identify the folks. We'll just go around and have people introduce themselves in the room, as well as people online will introduce themselves as well. And once that's done, we'll note that the gallery is not the only place where people can have their questions asked and answered. You can send an email to responses@acrd.bc.ca and do that as well. And when question period rolls around, we will in fact check that, as well as the chat on the Zoom format. So with that, we'll go around the table and we'll go counterclockwise. So I'm John Jack, I'm the chair, as well as the representative of the Huu-ay First Nations. And we'll go this way.
Good afternoon, Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Cindy Solda, City Councillor for the City of Port Alberni.
Good afternoon, I'm Mike Sparrow, I'm Cherry Creek Director.
Bob Schmidt, Alternate Director for Banfield.
Veda Siga, Director for Area C Long Beach.
Daniel Sayan, the CAO for the ACRD.
Okay, we also have some senior staff over there. Mike, do you want to start?
Hi, Mike Erg, General Manager of Planning and Development.
Good afternoon, Wendy Thompson, General Manager, Administrative Services.
Alrighty, I think that's everyone around the main table and the staff table. We'll start with Susan. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Susan Roth with Beaver Creek.
Okay, and Tom?
Tom Steer, Appointed Director, District of Tofino.
And Penny?
Good afternoon, Aklama Penny Cote, Regional Director for Sprout Lake.
And Fred?
I think you said my name. Fred Boyko, Regional Director for Beaufort.
Yes, I did. Thank you. And Marilyn?
Hi, Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet.
Nirvana?
Hello, Director Levana Mastrangelo from Ucluelet First Nation.
And Shari?
Shari Minions, Mayor for the City of Port Alberni.
And Wilfred, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Wilfred Coots, Appointed Director for the Yoho-Chukosuk Tribe Government, and apologies for being late and experiencing technical difficulties.
Well, thanks for being here. It ended up working out. Okay, so before we move on to the agenda, before we move on to other items, it was brought to my attention before the meeting that there was an unfortunate passing in the community recently. An ex-alternate director for the Beaufort regional area was passed away recently. His name is Wayne Crowley. And so there is a an article in today's paper, the AV News. I'm not going to read it out or anything, but I seem to remember that he was an alternate for Mike Kakura back in the day. And so with that, I'd just like to acknowledge his passing and give our condolences on behalf of the board, and wanted to ask if anybody wanted to say anything. So Ken Wood, and then we'll have Fred cap us off. Next. Go ahead, Ken.
And McRae, so Wayne and I went to school together. And we were really good friends. And we were friends in politics. He was quite the guy. He was a really good representative on the regional district. I was on the regional district for 10 or 11 years, and Wayne was the alternate representative. He was an excellent individual. He used to write an article in the paper. I think it was from the Stump, it was called. So he was quite a guy. He was a big logging contractor at one time, but he is really involved. His dad was really involved in the early politics of Alberni Valley too. So it's not many guys like that around anymore. He was really unique, and we're going to miss him in the Alberni Valley. He had a museum at where he lived out Beaver Creek. It's better than any museum you'll see in a government museum. It was unbelievable. And so I just hope it stays in the Alberni Valley. Yeah, we're going to all sharing the grief with Wayne and his family.
I think I'm unplugged. There we go. Is that better? Yeah, that's better. Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'd also like to say that Wayne was definitely a unique individual. He's actually fairly close to my property and was one of our neighbors, and we used him. And he actually had his granddaughter be one of the babysitters for our kid, and he'll be missed in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments anyone would like to make? Okay, we'll do a moment of silence for Wayne. Okay. Thank you. So once again, and on behalf of the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District, I'd like to send my condolences to the friends and family of Wade Crowley. Okay, so that brings us into the main business of the agenda. So the agenda should have two additions to them. First of which is a late submission for 9.1C. So it's extra material to be added to a development variance application. And then the second one is going to be a truly true late item that will be filed under item 12. It's an item regarding the Long Beach Airport Fire Flow Pump Station Construction Award. Are there any other items to add to the agenda? If not, we can move the agenda and second it as presented. Thank you. Moved by Director Solda, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. Okay, does anyone have any declarations, conflicts of interest, perceived conflict of interest, or gifts exceeding $250 in value? Once, and twice. Okay. All right, that brings us into the adoption of minutes under item 4. So the first one is for 4A, the Committee of the Whole meeting dated November 8th, 2023. Moved by Director Solda, seconded by Director Sparrow. Thank you. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, next item is the Board of Directors meeting for November 8th, 2023. Moved by Director Sparrow, seconded by Director Siga. And you have a comment?
I have a comment. Yes, I do. Regards to the Board of Directors meeting November 8th, I know my alternate was here and did a very good job. And one of the best things about being an alternate is that they don't notice that the director's not here. She's done a very good job, and she did a very good job. On page 11, you'll notice I put my regrets in. But however, on 9A, page 15, I somehow, I'm not quite sure who seconded the motion. However, I know my presence was not here. And also on page 19, she did a very good job, obviously.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Can we incorporate your amendments to be corrections? We can continue to move and second.
That'd be
The
great.
motion.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So still moved and seconded. Any further comments or questions? Errors, omissions? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? And motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item C, which is the Alberni Valley Regional Airport Advisory Committee meeting dated November 16th, 2023. Dr. Solda, move adoption. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? And motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to presentations, delegations, and petitions. So first of which is we have a couple of presentations. So we have a pair of 5 and 10-year service recognitions today. For 10-year, we have Heather Zenner, who is here at the table with us today, and a 5-year service recognition for Jenny Brown, who is in the gallery. So I'm wondering if, Daniel, if you had any quick comments?
I think,
Oh, please go ahead, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to recognize Heather Zenner with 10 years of service with the Regional District. Heather is currently, her current role is Manager of Administrative Services for the Regional District. However, she has worked in several departments across the region. Heather started her career with the Regional District in the Planning Department as a Junior Planner Bylaw Enforcement Officer. From there, she went on to be the Lands and Resources Coordinator in the Community Services Department, and then on to Protective Services Manager. Heather has enjoyed learning and growing in the Regional District, all of which has supported her success in her current role in the Administration Department. Heather and her husband love living in the Alberni Valley and raising their twin boys. Congratulations, Heather.
So on behalf of the Regional District, I'd like to thank you for your service. I think the other Heather is going to make me take a photo. So, all right. Okay, 1 moment, please. I actually don't know who's going to speak for Jenny. Is that Daniel? Please go ahead.
I will speak for Jenny Brown. Jenny has been with us for 5 years now. And it's a bit of a joke because 5 years exceeds all of Jenny's expectations. Jenny typically stays no more than 4 years in any organization as a matter of principle. Evidently, whether it's a mix of continued passion or just that she's continuing to have fun with the ACRD, she is still here and we appreciate it. Jenny has built team in this organization in the same way that she builds community. It's solutions focused, it's fun, and it's always about making sure that we move forward as a group. Jenny has been involved in key projects with the ACRD, including our solid waste management and the introduction of the sort and go 3 stream. And that has seen its way all the way throughout from the Alberni Valley out to the west with municipalities and with nations. She's also involved in other key areas such as our airport, the development of our first MOU with the Oakwood First Nation, and of course is also involved with a number of key team building elements within the organization, everything from proper project management structure all the way through the book club, lunch and learns, and more. Jenny is an avid cyclist and we support her in her endeavors. And we certainly want to acknowledge all of her great work as a leader and as a peer in our organization. So Jenny, please come on up.
On behalf of the board, thank you so much. And let's make sure she doesn't get any more extended vacations. Just in case. Okay, thank you for that. All right. So next up, we have Mr. Larry Stevenson, CEO of the Island Corridor Foundation. So he's going to provide an update on the ICF. And we generally give 10 minutes, Larry, and I'll just interrupt you. It doesn't seem like you're going to get close to finishing by then. I know it's you, so you probably will, but usually we'll just pause and I'll do a motion to make sure we can get you to finish. So with that, please go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to get everything set up here. Here we go. Can everybody see the screen?
Looks good.
All right. First of all, I'm happy to be here today. I really wish I was there with you. Actually, I love coming to the Valley, and I think Ken will attest to the fact that I take every opportunity I can to get to the Valley, but unfortunately, I just couldn't get up there. But I am happy to be here today to talk, for the opportunity to provide you with an update on where things are at with the corridor and where it is going. There's certainly a lot of questions, probably a lot more questions than answers. But hopefully, once we go through this, everyone will have a bit of a better understanding of where we're heading. Bear with me here. Why is it not advancing? There we go. So I think everybody's probably aware of the outcome of the lawsuit filed by SNCNAWAS, which required that the federal provincial government determine if they were going to fund the required improvements to the corridor. And of course, everybody also knows that when they came out with their decision, that if they chose not to fund it, then the lands could be returned back to the nation. They could come back to the court and ask for them back. So on March 14th of 2023, they did come out with their announcement that funding would not be advanced for the work on the corridor. But when they did that, they also said there was a need for a reconciliation-based approach to determining what the future use of the corridor is going to be. They committed to working with First Nations to develop that shared vision, and for what the future use would finally become. They also said that they respect and support reversion of the reserve lands, and we're going to talk about that in a little more depth in a few minutes. They made it clear that the future of the corridor and reconciliation are absolutely inseparable. So, post that meeting or post that announcement, of course, we have returned that portion of the corridor that operates through the SNCNAWAS lands, and it's now back in their hands. The ICF has always maintained that the land issues surrounding the corridor had to be resolved as part of the process in doing anything with the corridor, restoring it to a rail corridor or something else. And we addressed that issue in our business case, and frankly, we are happy to see that there's been some movement toward the resolution of those issues for our First Nation partners. This is an issue that's been hanging around for a very long time, and frankly, it needs to get resolved. And we're the first ones to say that needs to happen. The provincial government put forward $18 million to the members of the ICF to provide capacity to help everyone as we work through this process and to get a shared vision. And we were very happy to see that. And in my view, that's a bit like, putting your money where your mouth is. They talked about support for the corridor, and this money should help, get us to where we need to go regarding the future. So where are we at today? Sorry, this has just moved ahead. Bear with me, I apologize. So the province is leading discussions with First Nations, federal and provincial government, and the ICF. And Daniel Sayond has been a part of those meetings. The initial meetings were really exploratory in nature. This was an open dialogue that really needed to happen. We talked about the concerns. Everybody put their concerns on the table. We talked about viewpoints, and there was a lot of discussion about the future of the corridor. You know, and in my view, there were three primary issues that came out of those sessions. One was, of course, reversion. Reversion was central to the very issue of what we were talking about. And, you know, the nations made it very clear that this was going to be the starting point with this discussion. It wasn't going to be the end point. And again, we're going to get into that. The regional differences in terms of issues in the future exist. The needs of the ACRD are very different than the needs of the CRD, and that became very obvious very quick. You know, when you look at the CRD, of course, their discussion is more about the movement of masses of people and very little freight. And of course, the ACRD is probably just the opposite of that. There needed to be a better understanding of what the corridor itself is. You know, what is it, what it isn't, the role it plays as a corridor, utilities, and also, of course, that history we talked about. And unfortunately, it is very dark. So we'll talk about revision. I'm not going to read the slide that you see on your screen right now. That is a resolution that the ICF passed at our membership meeting, our AGM in October. This is really the vehicle that's going to give our board the ability to move forward with reversion with the nations. So two takeaways from this resolution. Number one is that the ICF fully supports the reversion of lands, and we now have the ability to deal with it and actually make it happen. But again, you know, the ICF has always been supportive of the land issues when it comes with First Nations. The second part of the resolution is really about ensuring that we approach this in such a way that we're making informed decisions. And we're making decisions that are going to minimize harm to the members and maximize the potential benefit. The reality is that there are pitfalls here. There's pitfalls and there's a lot of risk associated with what we're about to do. And, you know, I view it as it's really our duty to make sure that everybody understands exactly what those pitfalls are. So let's talk about what implementing reversion actually looks like. We've committed to making reversion a reality, and I think that has eased a lot of the tension regarding the corridor and has set us on a path where we can actually get to making it happen. That being said, reversion or returning land doesn't come without some issues, and we're going to list just a few of them here. You know, issues of remediation as an example. It's a key concern for everybody involved in this process. And just to use that one as an example, what needs to be remediated? What's the level of remediation? What's the level of contamination? Who's going to pay for this? Who's going to actually do this? And how do we proceed with this? You know, there's a need to mitigate, again, that risk and maximize the opportunity. And this work is, you know, just now starting to get underway. And then we've got issues like the commercial legal arguments or agreements and arguments, you know, statutory right-of-ways that we're working on. You know, as an example, there's over 1,200 unique and separate agreements impacting this corridor. And that runs the gambit from utilities, municipalities, regional districts, bridges, level crossings, individuals. So all of those issues need to be looked at and need to be resolved before we can move forward. And I think most that are involved in this process right now are starting to just gain a better understanding of just how complex this issue is going to be and how difficult it could be to, you know, unwind it, if you will. So then there's the regional issues that we talked about, the recognition of the differences. So what we've done is, as a group, is we've now broken that bigger group down to 4 working groups that really identify kind of the regional needs. You know, they're logical in how they were laid out. Parksville to Alberni, of course, is one in and of itself. And I got to say, you know, you guys, the ACRD, are well ahead of the curve in this respect. We know that you have your committee made and it's already established and it's working. That's not surprising to me because that's what the ACRD does. And I'm happy to see that, you know, you're talking about the corridor. I've had conversations with Ken Watts and with Brandy over at Hoopachesset, and, you know, I can see everybody's kind of gathering around a few central issues, you know, things like, you know, what are we going to do with the corridor as an emergency outlet? What about McLean Mill? So those things are all happening, and those conversations are happening today, and I'm happy to see them. I think things are going to move forward, and we're going to get to the things that your region wants. Education understanding, you know, we're doing a lot of work right now on the education understanding piece. The history of this corridor, again, I mean, you're going back to 1887, and we're talking about a lot of things that happened. And you know, when you get to the idea that we took a 20-mile swath of land from the southern part of this island to Courtenay and gave it to a private individual to develop this railroad, it shouldn't surprise anybody that we're having the discussions that we're having today. And of course, there's the complexity of the corridor that we talked about, those encumbrances, those legal agreements, and how they impact reversion, impact on various potential outcomes. Resourcing. So this is an issue that's impacting all of these activities. There's a good deal of work that's being done, and it's all pretty much being directed at the ICF. That shouldn't surprise anybody. It doesn't surprise me. The ICF, as the manager of the corridor, is the logical place for that work to take place. The only problem is that the ICF was the only organization wasn't provided with any capacity funding for those particular activities. I know you're going to deal with that issue right after, I think, my discussion with you. We were given $600,000 to do maintenance on the corridor to make sure that it's still here tomorrow for whatever it is we decide we're going to do with it. The request for funding to the ICF has come to the regional districts. And I'm happy to say that that $600,000, that's the first money that the ICF has ever received from any level of government in its entire history, and it's needed, and we're already at work with it. So let's talk a minute about the future. And I know we're getting close to calling it a time here, but I think it's pretty telling, you know, the provincial government's comments when the decision was made, you know, they're committing to finding the best use of the corridor, and they recognize the importance of the corridor, and they would like to see it preserved as much as possible. So, you know, on the one hand, the government said, look, this is an extremely important piece of what we're doing, and we need to make sure it's still here. And if you look at Rob Fleming's comments that he made on the day, I think that's absolutely true. And I do think that he does have an understanding of just how important and how critical this piece of infrastructure is to this island. Because as he says, if it's broken up and built over, it's going to be lost forever. And future generations will likely be unable to assemble it as a continuous transportation corridor of land like this again. So he recognizes it. And again, I think the government actually did put their best foot forward when they decided that they were going to, you know, to fund the work that's being done by the regional districts and First Nations. And then lastly, I think this is probably the most important part of this. You know, this is Premier David Eby on the 14th of March. A key part of this is not the end of the line for the corridor. It's really the beginning of work in a different way. And really, that's the view that we've embraced. I think the people that are involved in these meetings have all gathered around this particular issue, and we're going to move forward as designed here. And I hope that, you know, we're going to, at some point in the future, be able to come out and say, this is what we've decided we're going to do with that corridor. And of course, we'll do that in consultation with all of our stakeholders. So again, thank you for coming. I know I covered a lot of stuff. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Larry. That's a good overview. Are there any comments or questions? Director Solda, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I've been on the Corridor Foundation in the past, and I know the Corridor Foundation has been going on for many, many, many years. And it's really frustrating because when we had discussions in the past, we talked about, yes, we will have a link from south to north of the island, but Port Alberni, this area would not be looked at. And who knows when and if it would ever be looked at. And I understand that we need to get the north and south all connected, but Port Alberni is really important. So I'm just wondering, where are we on this? I mean, we as a regional district have given money, and as well as the city's part of all that. And I'm glad to see that the Premier has made that statement, and 600,000 probably wouldn't be enough to fix everything. Port Alberni, of course, if you look at our rail, like, it needs a lot of work, right? So I'm just kind of curious to know, has Port Alberni really been considered other than getting the dollars from, and where are we on the map? You know, that's going to be really important going forward. I just know for many years, that's how it's always been. And the Corridor Foundation, this discussion is not new to me. And so I'll end it there and let you comment. Thanks.
Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you for that question. You know, I'm with you 100%. You know, this conversation, in my view, has gone on way, way too long now. As far as where does Alberni fit in all of this? I mean, actually, Alberni, I would suggest to you, plays a much bigger role than what you might think. You know, the government itself commissioned a report, you know, after we filed our business case on the freight opportunity that exists in Port Alberni. And really, the Port Alberni leg of this is extremely important to the future of this rail line, because it's going to subsidize the rest of it. And, you know, when you look at the breakdown between how we've set up these regions, again, when you talk to the CRD, they're not really interested in talking about a freight car. They only want to talk about moving people. That's a different discussion in Port Alberni. And I can tell you, as long as I've been here, Port Alberni has been absolutely central to that conversation and that discussion, because I think it's so important to this island. And it does play a big role in the business case. There's no question about that. So have no fear. I mean, and we got into the meetings. It was quite nice to watch Brandy at work, from Pupachesit, because she literally stood up in the meeting and said, look, I get that the people in the CRD want a passenger train, but you know what? I want a train and I want it now. Like, you guys can go argue about that over here, but over here, it's a different kind of conversation. And it really is a different kind of conversation, but it's an extremely important one. And I would suggest to you that Alberni has a very strong interest in this, and they are being heard, and they are a big part of this conversation.
Yeah, you can have one last one, and then we'll go to Director Roth and then to Ken.
I would agree with you. Port Alberni's region has been always big in a conversation regarding rail and freight and everything like that. Even with the mills changing and stuff like that, there is other freight that can be sent and delivered by rail. But then again, I'm just a skeptic at heart, and I would like to see it succeed. And there has been time when I've sat on this board too with the regional district that there was discussion of not funding because we weren't seeing results, and that's not present. I'm not saying presently this has been said, but in the past. Okay. And so I just wanted to share that information with you. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Thank you for that. I have Director Roth up next, and then we'll go to Ken McCrae.
Hi. Thank you, Larry, for your talk there. I'm really interested in McLean Mill, and I want to know if your organization would be involved at all with any remediation work at McLean Mill. There's a 900-page report out there that indicates the former mill site is highly contaminated and the sources are unknown. And that's something I think is really important, especially to me who lives downstream from the mill site.
So when we talk about McLean Mill, so there's a couple of things going on, which I'm sure you're aware of. I mean, there's a group that's come together now to start looking at restoring the mill site and bringing it back up and running, putting rail service back to the mill. We've all come together with Pupachesit, with Seychat, the regional district, the city, and we've all put resources towards this, and we're going to take a case to ICE-T to get funding to, put a study together to see what that looks like. Now, as far as the contamination issues at the mill site itself, I can't speak to that because I'm not sure what it is. I'm not even sure that it's related to the actual railway portion of it. It's probably more related to the mill itself, but it's going to be a subject of discussion as we get into this idea of restoring service out there and turning it back into, a first-class tourism facility. So it's a good note to have, and it'll certainly be raised in that context.
Have you seen the report, the report on contamination? Because I could probably send it to you.
Please do. I would appreciate that because I have not seen the actual report itself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So the UCRD's representative of the Island Corridor Foundation is former Mayor Ken McCrae. So you wanted to say something, so please use the podium. Thanks.
Yeah, just a couple of comments just about McLean's Mill. So as you know, the people who were involved in the train and everything going to McLean's Mill, a lot of them have passed on. So a few of us get together now and we're trying to get we've raised enough money. We've raised over $30,000. And we hope to be rematched with the Island Corridor group on the east coast of the island, get money from them if we have that amount of money. So there's 4 or 5 of us. We hope to have the train running again next year. We had a whole bunch of volunteers who came in and redid all the boilers, boiler makers and that. They did it for free. So we're all ready to go. We're going to start out slowly. And eventually we hope to get to McLean's Mill. Next year, we hope to just run along the waterfront, with our renovation of our new station and our new trail. So it's just a start. So we're just getting going. Just a comment about the use of the railroad. I come out of the Pulp and Paper Union, and I was involved in 1995 when the Rail America left, and the company asked me, I was a negotiator for our union, volunteer, and they asked me if I'd help negotiate a contract with Rail America to get it going again, because this was the only line from here to Nanaimo where they made any money, and we couldn't do anything with Rail America. It was just too arrogant and stubborn. We just couldn't get anywhere. So they kind of left, and people took over. There had been no maintenance done on the rail line for a long time. But we hope that, to get it going again. Catalyst is very interested. The Sand Group is very interested. The fish plants, even on the West Coast, are interested in getting fish coming out of here. And so it'd be probably a viable operation. As far as I'm concerned, I've been on it since we started in 2005, when Sue Campbell came in front of us and talked to us and said, there's a contract going out to lift up the rails on the rail line. We said, what's happening? And we had a big meeting in Cowichan with the First Nations, and everybody was there, all the big governments, the deputy ministers and everybody. And they all said that this is ours, we own this. And the chief from the Cowichan band made the comment, I don't know what you guys are talking about. The rail line is ours, the property is ours. And that's where we are right now. We're back to that situation from 2005. And it's coming over to the First Nations. And, I think we're going to do quite well. We've got a whole new group together now, young people on there. And it's, they're good negotiators. My wife is First Nations. She's a negotiator. And, they're really good at that. Different style than we have, but they're going to do something. We're going to work well with them. And I'm very hopeful that we're going to move ahead in the next while. And the line from here, you'll be able to take a tourist train from Victoria, then the Nine will come here, stay overnight, get on the boat, go down the Alberta Inlet, stay in Ucluelet to Tofino, and then go on to Victoria. That's always been our dream, because we got the resources and we got the people who want to make that move, and we're going to do it. I just hope we do it in our lifetime. Thank you.
Can you turn off the microphone? Oh, thanks. Okay, next up I have Director Cote, and I'm wondering, Director Roth, do you still have your hand up, or is your hand up again? You moved fast enough that you put it down. Okay. All right, so Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I have been on the board a very long time and sitting next to Ken McRae. We used to talk all the time about the rail. He'd always be telling me how, Burnie to Victoria and back maybe twice a day. And I really like to see that keep going, like us supporting this going forward. I have a question about the railway ties, because there was a contract at one point where the mills in Port Alberni were producing those ties. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity in the future for our mills to start producing those again. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Penny. Yeah, no, the discussion of the ties has been ongoing. I mean, certainly if the rail line is restored, it's our hope that all of those resources are going to come from this island, because we may as well, employ people here on the island to our own benefit. But going back to the presentation, one of the things I do want to make clear is that the Island Corridor Foundation today is, in a place where we're going to work with all of our membership, of which you are a member, and to determine what the future of this corridor is going to be. And as you all know, I spent the better part of 5 years doing the rah, let's get a train, because that was my job. I'm still very supportive of that. And frankly, I still think that's the highest and best use for the corridor. But we're going to have to take this one step at a time. And the first part of this is to make sure that we're returning those lands to the nations, having those conversations about what they want to do with it. And frankly, they've been very clear, like, we don't want to have that conversation, is what they're saying, until we know that this land has been returned. And I think we've kind of come over that hurdle now with the resolution that we passed, and we've been very clear in the meetings that that is not an issue anymore. So now we're going to start having the conversations about what is it we want this corridor to be, because again, when you think about 1,200 separate agreements on that corridor, I mean, we've got sewer lines, water lines, gas lines, electricity, fiber optic cables, everything runs underneath that corridor. So this is much more than a conversation about, the train, although again, I personally believe that's the best place for it. And, to your comment and others, I mean, the fact that this has been going on from 2005, it's always amazed me. I mean, I didn't think it should be going on at all, because I think there's a real need and we need to move forward. But, we'll see. We're going to walk through that process.
Thank you, Larry. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, I think the only comment or question, I have a comment and a question, I suppose. So the first comment is, The rail corridor is important for several aspects, and I think splitting it up into those regions is going to be important. It feels like the interest coming from the West Coast is from a freight perspective, from an economic development perspective. And I see that the real value there is connecting our part of the island with the east coast of the island, specifically Nanaimo, but maybe even other places as well, Tremaine, Duncan, that kind of thing. With that in mind, that still brings into question the status of what Nanusa is going to do with their portion of the territory and so on and so forth. And so those are the things that are kind of weighing on my mind, because there are things happening in the global economy right now that may affect logistics, global logistics, in a way that means that just-in-time delivery doesn't really work in the same way that it has in the past. And as a result of that, we may need to look at other logistical configurations for Canada and for North America. And therefore, I think that there is an argument from an economic perspective, like a macroeconomic perspective, that the rail corridor would be quite important in terms of connecting the island together in real ways. That being said, I'm wondering, Larry, if you've had any interactions with the treaty negotiations that have been undertaken under the Tillamook Treaty. So the Nanusa First Nation, as well as Beecher Bay and several other First Nations, have been negotiating, and I think they're in the agreement in principle or final agreement stage of the treaty. And have you been able to speak to their table or to the province in regards to what the plans may be in how these ENN lands interact with their treaty negotiations and so on and so forth? I know that that's several steps into the future, but I'm just wondering if you have any other comments or reports in that way. Thanks. Please go ahead.
To your comment about the importance and the changes in the world and things that are happening. I mean, when you look at Port Alberni and you look at the benefits that come with moving freight through Port Alberni, to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, there's a huge opportunity here, and you're right. The whole just-in-time issue is one that's changing. I mean, it's pretty dynamic at this point. We've gone from this idea that just-in-time was the great thing to do until it wasn't the great thing to do. So, when you look at the island, it becomes a great spot as a starting point, as a gathering point. And there's a lot of work going on in that regard, as I know you're aware, with, the foreign trade zone and those types of issues. So massive opportunity, I think, not just for Port Alberni, but for the entire island. That's the first piece. The second piece is that, I think we all need to grasp the idea that this island is not a bastion in of itself. There's people moving here at a rapid rate. We're going to have people all over this island in no time flat, and we need to move them. And we need to move the goods that they need to survive. So, the railroad, I think, provides that backbone, or at least that corridor does. On the issue of the treaty table, it's been a kind of a frustration for me that we can't seem to get into that conversation. Now, the province assures me that it's always in consideration. And, we just got some notices about Comox finalizing some of the work that they're doing. And it's nice to get the notice, and it looks like we've been kind of part of that conversation, but we haven't. The province pretty much says, and, the government pretty much says that we just really don't have space for you yet at that table. So we've been kind of reliant upon them to do that, and we've not really gotten into it. I wish I could say that we have, but we have not.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your presentation, Larry.
Very welcome. Thank you again for having me.
Okay, so that brings us into the end of petitions, delegations, and presentations. And that brings us into correspondence for action. And this is pretty directly related. So 6A is a request for funding support for the Island Corridor Foundation and their participation in the current planning process led by the province. So there is a possible motion here where we would contribute $25,000 from the grant received from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. The money that we did receive as a result of the decision that came down on the Island Corridor, the ENN lens. So I think the ask is pretty straightforward from Larry. So, okay, thank you. Director Solda has moved. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roth. Any further comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Looks like you'll be getting something across there. So thank you for your presentation.
And thank you so much for that. It means a lot, and we're going to be able to take that money and put it to good use. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, have a good day. So with that, that brings us to item 7, which is correspondence for information. Would anyone like to pull anything out? I would, but we'll see if other people note it. Director Roth, please go ahead. Oh, you're muted, Director Roth, sorry.
Sorry. I'd like to pull out A, Office of the Minister of Housing. Bill 44, the new legislation to support local government housing initiatives, will put a higher demand on community water systems. That's something that hasn't been talked about yet. This further backs up as to why Beaver Creek needs to secure its own water source rather than continuing to purchase bulk water from the city of Port Alberni. The city's water source may not have enough capacity to supply future growth, as well as continuing to supply bulk water to areas outside of the city's boundary. The letter from the minister says the new legislation will allow up to 4 units in single detached and duplex zones and up to 6 units permitted in a single detached and duplex zone close to bus stops with frequent service. It also will allow secondary suites or an accessory dwelling unit on single detached lots throughout BC. Beaver Creek will likely experience growth due to these changes as well. And also all the more reason to ensure we have enough capacity to supply water to these new housing initiatives. I don't want a bulk water agreement to stand in the way of any growth. So I just wanted to tie those two together and make sure everybody knows that it will impact our community water systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Roth. I think this interfaces with the agricultural portions of Beaver Creek and Cherry Creek and Beaufort as well. So I think having a unified conversation about the agricultural aspects is going to be important as well. So it's very timely. Are there any other items to be pulled out? For me, I do have item B. I'd just like to recognize that there was a thank you sent from West Kelowna regarding the Beaver Creek, Sprout Lake, and Cherry Creek fire departments and their active participation in the fires this past summer. And so I was made aware of an anecdote that maybe Daniel can relate about some of that interaction. And I do think that because of Cherry Creek being somewhat separate, we may want to have a motion just to pass this thank you on to them as well. We'll have Mike do that after. But Daniel, if you'd like.
Yeah, I think it's just a small world. As it happens, we recently had a contractor do some training for the ACRD board, for Port Alberni's council, and for our joint staff. And as it happens, it was the Beaver Creek Fire Department that was deployed to the area where her home was. Unfortunately, they could not save her house, but she did express gratitude to the fact that our crews did help preserve the community. So it's worthy of rebuilding a house. There are still trees. There are still other buildings there. And it makes the rebuild and the return to, I put in quotations, somewhat normalcy possible. And so it's just amazing to see the impacts that occur and how it is a small world, how that ended up happening. So it's a good story to share.
Okay, so I've been passed the note that the thank you letter has been forwarded to each of the fire departments. So I'm wondering, Mike, if you wanted to move to receive the correspondence for information and have a last comment.
I'll do that first. Yes.
Okay.
You receive the correspondence for information, but also put the Cherry Creek. They're not part of the regional district, and sometimes it gets confusing. Being an improvement district, it goes to regional districts, which are 90% of all fire departments. So, but yes, they put the letter forward to the fire departments to thank them on their behalf for what they have done, not only this year but in previous years too. So.
Thank you. So, move to receive is seconded by Director Solda. Any further comments? So nothing but thanks and respect for all that work. Okay, well, with that, I'll say all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us into item 8. So 8A is request for request for decision regarding an alternate director for the regional library. Heather, did you want to take this?
Yes, at the last board meeting, we appointed Director Cote and Director Haggart to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board. But they pointed out to us that it can't be a City of Port Alberta director on the board. So we need to designate a different alternate. And this needs to be from one of the electoral area directors or one of the First Nation representatives.
Thank you, Heather. So on that, I had a question for Director Cote and then a question for Director Mastrangelo. Dr. Cote, the meetings for the regional library, they often take place in places like Courtney and Campbell River and so on and so forth, correct?
No, most of them are Zoom
Oh, that's even
or
better.
in Nanaimo.
Okay.
The only time that they go to another location is when they're opening a library and not really having any openings in the very near future.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I have been the alternate director in the past, and I can say that while I'm willing to do it, I do think that being an alternate director is not all that strenuous. And I was wondering if Dr. Mastrangelo would be willing to be the alternate director for the library.
Excuse me. Yes, that's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to move that?
I'll make that motion. It's Penny.
Lavana, would you like to second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Dr. Mastrangelo. Okay, that brings us to item B, which is the ACRD strategic plan adoption. Daniel, please go ahead.
Thank you. So on November 8th, the board reviewed the draft strategic plan for 2024 to 2027. And what was reviewed and supported is attached in the November 8th report as Appendix C. What staff did do is in the body of the actual report, we assembled and placed in where we think is appropriate the comments and amendments that the board made on November 8th. And so just for clarity, what the board would be supporting if we advance with the approval of the strategic plan is what you see in Appendix C of the November 8th report as amended by the key factors that are in the body of the report for the board today. And so just for clarity, they're identified as amendment for objective 2.3 under managing our assets and infrastructure. In that area, we have a review and further study of options available. I have 2 and 4. 4, so we removed the 2. The Beaver Creek water system. A review of options available for maintaining the long-term security of public water sources and watersheds. For example, we had a discussion around the Cherry Creek watershed, but there are others we're aware of across the region. Under objective 2.4, we added the addition of including the examination of impacts of drought on the security of our water systems. Under 3, which is partnerships and communications, we have a number of amendments. Under 3.3, we have the creation of an online dashboard that actively communicates key aspects and status of specific development variance permits, building permits, zoning applications, etc., being processed by the ACRD to allow applicants to see where their application process is at. The provision of quarterly board updates on these applications until the dashboard is fully functional. We also have the examination and possible implementation of physical and/or policy options to help increase public access to ACRD meetings. For example, mobile recording and streaming hardware through to provision of childminding for parents that wish to attend meetings. And the last amendment is under advocacy and service, objective 4.1, which is the addition of and including Tofino Health Services, Cherry Creek Water, alternative and emergency routes, including but not limited to Highway 4, and explore collaborative service options in market housing rentals and workforce housing, including the exploration of options for reduced administrative and regulatory redundancies and inefficiencies. enhance support and collaboration for the provision of all aspects of primary healthcare services from preventative to acute.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. I would note that seeing item 3 reminded me that the calendar is back to the way it was on the website. So that's it. That's good to see. Dr. Boyko, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting to mention the calendar because I didn't notice it yesterday, but if it's back up, I appreciate that. And thank you very much for whoever did that. I have a note for, I don't know what item number it is. I didn't look it up, but with regard to the public notification of the planning items, development permits, blah, 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 making that open to public. I just want to make something time bound to say that it be done by the end of Q2 next year. So give it a 6-7 month timeline from now. Thank you.
Please go ahead, Daniel.
I'll certainly just echo that staff received that message loud and clear. We typically don't put timelines in like specific dates within the year in the strategic plan, but it is something that we will be reporting back to the board within our budget process so that we're able to identify. We like putting it, and again, the board can change this, but we like putting it in the context of the budget. It allows the staff to sort of structure all the priorities for 2024 and be able to give a comprehensive overview of what projects are happening when, based on the priorities that the board has established.
I would note for the record that Director Boyko is holding up his phone.
And Heather Thompson did the calendar.
Oh, Heather did the calendar. Okay, yeah, it's good. It's slightly smaller, but it's everywhere now. Every time you click through stuff, even on the mobile, which is good. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, there is a motion here for the adoption of the strategic plan. So, noting that it's as presented, which means that it will incorporate the changes that are contemplated in the briefing note. So we don't have to do everything line by line if we don't want to. Dr. Silva, thank you. Okay, so there are, it's one motion, but they're combined because there's an and there. So I'll read it out for our benefit. That the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District, ACRD, Board of Directors adopt the 2024 to 2027 strategic plan as presented, and that the Alberni ACRD Board of Directors instruct staff to utilize the 2024-2027 strategic plan as the basis for developing the draft 2024 budget and financial plan. So that's moved. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? I think my only comment is I really appreciated the way in which we went through the process of strategic planning and those two kind of multiple steps. I think that phased approach really helped incorporate making sure everyone had their say when it comes to the creation of the strategic plan, especially given we had to wait for Mike to finally get here. Never any doubt, but you know, sometimes you take your time. So thank you, everyone. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, please pass on my thanks to Brian for all the help that he's given as well. Okay, so that brings us to item C, which is a request for decision regarding the Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society request for funding support. So Daniel, please go ahead.
On this request, what we have is, let me just catch up where I'm at. The request for $5,000 was originally presented to the board. I'm forgetting the date now, but in October, and at the time, the board did pass a resolution that we would issue a letter of support for the project, but that we would redirect the request for additional funds to the grant in aid process in 2024. Since that time, we've had discussions with the province through ICF, and have also been notified of the fact that the province would support the use of our $600,000 grant for discussions along the rail corridor towards this end, because it is a study that they're looking at that advances the use and engagement of the rail corridor. So rather than wait until the grant and aid process, which is tax funded through the ACRD, we thought it would be prudent to come back now and ask if the board would support using the grant, which is still tax funded, but eventually, towards advancing this initiative in a more timely way.
Thank you. Director Solda?
I'll move that the Alberni-Cliquot Regional District contributes $5,000 from the Island Rail Corridor Provincial Grant, which the ACRD received from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to the Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society to support their Island Coastal Economic Trust Grant application to the Investment Readiness Program.
Great. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Did you have a comment as well, or just second? Just second? Okay. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right. My pen's dying. Next up is item D, a request for decision regarding the UBCM grant applications for emergency support services and emergency operations centers. Karen, I think you're online, eh? Yeah, there you are. Please go ahead.
I am. Thank you. Before you today is a request for decision to support the submission of 2 grant applications. These are available from the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund through UBCM. One of them is for the, one grant is for the Emergency Support Services Program, and the other is for the Emergency Operations Center. We've applied for these grants annually for the last several years, and the funds that we've received have very much helped improve the emergency program and our regional readiness. Specifically with the EOC grant the funding will help support training opportunities. It will provide an opportunity to do an exercise and enables us to purchase EOC supplies and equipment to improve our readiness. And with the ESS grant, it will also support training and exercises, as well as volunteer recruitment and retention activities, and provide us with an opportunity to purchase supplies and equipment to support reception centers and group lodging facilities. The application deadlines are January and February, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? I would note that there's 2 separate motions as well, one on the bottom of one page, one on the top of the other. Director Sparrow and then Director Cote.
Yeah, thank you for that. Now, you say you're going to try and retain volunteers. How are you use this program to help retain volunteers?
We use this funding to help support our meetings. We also use this program to buy kits that our volunteers use, so office equipment that they use to respond. We also use it as thank you and appreciation gifts, as well as when we have training, we offer different incentives and prizes along the way to take training courses. So there's a number of different purchases of supplies and equipment that we use to help support our volunteers.
Okay, thank you. I have Director Cote and then Director Solda.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a question around the who is this going to? It will be all of the regional districts. So is this including on the West Coast, Tofino and Ucluelet and Port Alberni, or is it just the rural areas? Thank you.
Absolutely. With the ESS grant this year, it included the Long Beach electoral area, Banfield, as well as Alberni Valley electoral areas, and the city of Port Alberni. We partnered with the city of Port Alberni, and we would be looked to doing that again for next year. With the EOC grant, we partnered with, 2 years ago, we did partner with Tofino and Ucluelet, and we had a regional exercise. Last year, we just partnered with the city. At this moment, we're talking to see what we want to do for next year. I don't actually have an answer for you. We will definitely be partnering with the city, and we'll be looking to see if we want to do another regional exercise again.
Thank you. Director Solda.
Thank you. I really believe in the grant, and I think it's great that you're applying for it. What I would like to know is, are you going to look at courses for the policymakers with the EOC? There hasn't been courses or anything like that, training for policymakers, because in the past we had that with the Justice Institute where you could take levels of training, and I believe I took them all except for the one I didn't take, which is to do with financing. And I think it would really help policymakers if you've never seen the information that's out there for the emergency, like that's a big binder. And when that came through and I actually saw that, I went, wow, I didn't realize that. And I think that would be really helpful for boards where there's the policymakers involved and to know what goes on when there is an emergency, just to put it out there too.
Thank you for that. Training and exercises are such a big part of our preparedness. So I'm happy to hear the interest. We will definitely be looking at training, and we can look, we haven't written our grant yet for the EOC, so we can look at training opportunities. Just further to that, there are some free training opportunities that come through the JIBC and EMCR. And so that might be an option where there are a number of different courses available. So I can also provide that information if there's interest there as well.
Thank you for that. Okay, would anyone like to move the first of the two motions? Thank you, Dr. Silva. The motion reads that the Alberta Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors support making an application to the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Program Fund for Emergency Support Services with interested grant partners. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
The second motion.
All right, and the second motion has been moved by Director Silva. It reads that the Alberta Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors support making an application to the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Program Fund for emergency operations centers and training with interested grant partners. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll say that emergency services, emergency operations centers, anything having to do with emergency planning, emergency, everything having to do with that sort of thing, we've seen that it's really important. So any support we can get on that is always great, especially when it comes to maintaining our level of volunteers. Go ahead, Dr. Silva.
Just a quick one too. Regarding the policymakers, we also had staff involved in it because there's a lot of new staff and they haven't had this experience. So that it was great for the training part of it. So I just want to make sure they're included in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item E, which is a request for decision regarding airport loader purchase and grant approval. Jenny, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So we've got great news. We received 100% funding from the ACAP, which is the Airport Capital Assistance Program, to purchase a medium-duty loader as well as the attachments for snow removal. We put this grant application in actually last year and it wasn't successful, but it got rolled forward. So this is excellent. We've done some preliminary looking at the equipment purchase and we're confident that we're going to be able to purchase the loader with 100% funding. And what we're asking the board to consider is doing this as an RFQ process. So typically we use a tender or we'll use the RFP. And when it's something that's very specific, there's no variation in what it's going to be. We're finding that the request for quotation is really the best process to use. It allows us to just spec out the equipment that we know we need. And there's a limited number of vendors that can bid on it. We've done this before with our last vehicle purchase, as well as I think with another piece of equipment, and we found that it is a very efficient and effective system. So if the board passes this resolution, we will also delegate authority so that as long as the quotes come in within our approved budget, which is all grant funded, then the CAO will be able to execute the contract and we can have the loader in place in no time. So if there's any questions, I am happy to answer them.
Jenny, I had a question in regards for that. The motion seems to be two parts, and that RFQ part is in the second. Is there anything else that's necessary, or is this pretty comprehensive for the motion necessary to do that?
The motions should be adequate. Our procurement people look it through, and this is what they would like.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Boyko, and then Dr. Sparrow, and then Dr. Seagat.
Thank you, Chair. So as I understand, it's just to bypass the project process we're going out for getting 3 separate bids because it takes too long and there's not a lot of qualified people to provide this? Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
No, we're still going to be getting competitive bids. That process will happen, but with an RFP, we will do, we have a whole criteria for awarding and we assess everything. There's really nothing to assess. Either it is the equipment or it isn't the equipment. So it is price alone that will dictate if they're submitting what we want. There's just, the equipment is the equipment. So that's why we're not looking to do that. And a tender is just a very detailed process, which is unnecessary. Again, for we know that it's a piece of equipment and it's going to be this versus like a tender is so much more appropriate for construction of a water main or a pump station or large construction projects, which are also detailed. But this is not doing anything or building anything. They're just giving us a piece of equipment.
Okay. I forgot the order in which we said. I think Director Sparrow's up next. Please go ahead.
Thank you for that. So this is 100% funded up to say $500,000. What happens if the numbers come in higher than that? Do we still get funding for that, or is that going to have to come out of the budget?
Through the chair, with these resolutions that are passed, we only have authorization to spend that money. So if we do end up getting prices that are higher than that, we would have to come back to the board and report back and give options. Some of those options might be going back to our funding partner and see if they're willing to increase that. Or we could look to see if we have availability in the reserve. Based on what we know, the market price is right now, because we have done a little bit of investigation, we don't anticipate that. So we do believe it will come in under the 533,000. But if it doesn't, you will see us again.
Thank you. Dr. Siga, please go ahead.
I was just going to read the motion.
Do so. Yeah.
Okay
go
to
ahead.
do that? Okay. I move that the Alberta Classic Regional District Board of Directors exempt the purchase of a new medium-duty loader and associated loader attachments from the ACRD's purchasing policy request for proposal process, and I read 2 parts. And further, that the Alberta Classic Regional District Board of Directors authorize staff to undertake a request for quotation process for this purchase and delegate authority to the Chief Administrative Officer to authorize the purchase.
I have a seconder. Oh, thank you, Dr. Steer. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us into item 9, planning matters. 9.1 is for electoral area directors only, but everyone counts for quorum. So please, if you do get up, come back quickly. First one is 9.1A in regards to a temporary use permit for Banfield. Mike, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, so this is a temporary use permit application for a short-term vacation rental at 274 South Banfield Road. The board first considered this permit application at the September 27th board meeting. Public notification has now taken place and no correspondence has been received. And all the conditions that the board considered at the 27th meeting have now been met, and staff recommend that the permit be issued, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Dr. Schmidt?
No comments. I'm ready to move that motion.
Okay, the motion has been moved. It states that the Board of Directors issue temporary use permit, TUP 23005. Do we have a second? Thank you, Director Cote. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, electoral area directors? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, next item is item B. It's a rezoning application for Beaufort. Mike, please go ahead.
Oh, yes, thank you. So this is a rezoning application for 5400 Kingston Road. It's in the Beaufort electoral area. This property, the total area is 8.7 acres, and it is actually split or bisected by the in rail right of way. So the property is actually accessed from 2 different areas. The proposed zoning is to allow for the property to be subdivided. With the west portion would be the new lot, which would be 2.7 acres, and again, following the lines of the railway right away. Staff recommend proceeding, subject to the conditions that are outlined in the staff report. This was reviewed by the Beaufort Advisory Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission also recommended moving forward. And I am happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Director Boyko, oh, you're not at your seat. You do have headphones on. Oh, it's Marilyn who's on there. Sorry. Director Boyko, please go ahead. Sorry, the camera's shifted around. I thought, never mind. Go ahead, Director Boyko.
I can take my hat off, so I'm a little shinier up there if you want. We had a meeting with the planning group last week. Everyone was in favor of it. The neighbors are all happy with it. So I'm going to put for the motion that bylaw 1468, Beaufort Official Community Plan Amendment bylaw be read a first time.
Seconded by Director Roth. Thank you. Any further comments? Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Sparrow.
I have a weird comment. Reading this, the top half of the property says in Cherry Creek Fire Department, which may or may not be true. I knew they were out for a while, then they applied to go in, then they applied to go out. I wonder if they applied to go back in again or not, because they can do that. So just making sure that it's accurate that they are inside now again.
Certainly the assessment information shows that it is, but part of the application process is we refer to the Cherry Creek Fire Chief to make sure that, you know, sort of the zoning and such is it meets it, and we will ask him that question as well, just to make sure that it actually is in the fire protection area.
Thank you, Director Cote. You are muted though.
Thank you. I'm looking at page 86, and a lot that's right next to it. I'm not quite sure how to interpret that. It's 5,300, and there it looks like a whole bunch of little lots next to it. So I'm just trying to understand. And then the road would come off of Salford, I guess, past those lots. Is that how I'm understanding this, or?
Yes, you are correct. Those are small parcels. They would be a very old block plan subdivision, but they're individual parcels. I don't know. In some instances, these are sometimes owned by the provincial government. I don't have any of that information offhand, but they are individual parcels.
Okay, thank you. It just, so the road would to that one lot would come through there then, past those?
Yes, and the property owners have an agreement to access the property as well. But the road is. There is a road allowance that comes to the property there.
Oh, okay, great. I just was concerned that maybe there was going to be a number of agreements that would have to be put in place for that road to come in there. Great. Thank you very much for the information.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none. Electoral area directors, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Dr. Boyko, you want to carry on?
Thank you, Chair. I sure do. Make a motion that bylaw P1469, Regional District of Alberta Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment be read a first time.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Roth. Comments? Director Cote, I think your hand is still up, or do you have another comment? Okay, it's still up. Okay, with that, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Please continue, Director Boyko.
Just give me a minute. Yes, Chair. That the motion that the public hearing bylaws P1468 and 1469 be delegated to the Director of Electoral Area B, Beaufort, the alternate director or the chairperson of the regional district.
Seconded by Director Roth. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion carried.
And finally, Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the board of directors confirm that adoption of P 1468 and 1469 is subject to one, registration of the easement over the neighboring property to provide road access to the western portion of the property from Drinkwater Road. Item 2, agreement to include the property within the Beaver Creek Fire Protection System service area. And 3, confirmation that a registered on-site wastewater practitioner that the property can accommodate on-site sewage disposal to a 2-acre minimum lot size.
Seconded by Director Roth. Thank you for that. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. All right, that concludes item B. That brings us into item C, which has the late submission, which is an email that was sent out by email, but may be attached in other places as well. I believe it was up on the posting on the website too. Okay, so Mike, this is for Sprott Lake.
Yes, thank you. So this is for a variance application for a property at 10089 Blower Road. This is the second review of this variance application. The first variance application was reviewed by the board, and it was originally for a 5-foot setback. The applicants have amended it to reduce the setback variance to 8 feet from the property lines. And this would allow for a 33-foot wide home on this 49.5 5-foot wide lot. So I just want to note that the property is very small. I would also direct directors to page 94, which shows an aerial photo with the proposed setbacks and location of the buildings that are the subject of the variance. I would note that the current house is closer to the lake, so the proposed house, the way it's drawn out here, would be a little bit back farther from the lake, and it would be farther from the southwest property and farther away from the house. It's in the southwest or the left-hand side of the page. The property to the east is also a narrow lot and is in close proximity to the property boundaries. There's also a variance application, a height variance application for a proposed shop, which is located sort of more to the back of the property. We have received one letter, and that letter expressed some concern. It has some. The author of the letter has some questions about how the house will look, and I would note that the height and size of the house is part of the zoning that's already there. They're not, for the house itself, they're not looking at any variance to the height, just to the setback from the sides. And staff would recommend that the board issue this variance, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Director Cote?
Okay, all right. Sorry. So we only had the one letter from one of the neighbors. It doesn't sound like there's any more problems. There was complaints from the neighbors in the past. I believe that's why we pulled it back. Am I correct? And the applicants revised their application? Can staff?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, thank you. It sounds like everything is in place right now. They've actually pushed their setback further away from the property line. So at this point, I would make the recommendation that the Board of Directors issue Development Variance Permit DVD 23007.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Siga. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, that concludes the planning segment. Thank you, Mike. That brings us to 10.1, which are staff reports. Would anyone like to pull anything out? I would note that the meeting schedule is going to become somewhat more intensive given the budgeting process that we'll be going through. I would note that there are times early on for you to get through and go and have your say, but there are also times that are built in to the new year as well that allow for further work to be done or for something to be brought up during that period as well. Obviously, the later in the year that, or the later in time that we bring any substantive changes to the budget, the more stressed out Terry and her team will be. But that's neither here nor there. But I would note that we may not necessarily need all of the meetings as we get further into the budget discussions, but it's always good to have them in place just in case that we do. That would be the only thing for me. Would anyone like to pull anything else out? If not, we can have a motion to receive the reports. All right, thank you, Dr. Silda and Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to a committee report from the Agricultural Development Committee. Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Thank you. I like to be the only person on the single committee line, but Agricultural Development Committee, we had a meeting yesterday. One of the discussions was regarding school gardens, and when teachers move between schools, the gardens are often neglected and fall into disrepair. It's basically some correspondence regarding how to alleviate that in the future. Support for further funding for water for agricultural initiatives. We looked into getting federal funding for the $100,000 grant to cover the remaining 25%. North Island College is looking for funding to complete the next phase for their meat processing course. Alberta Farmers Institute had their annual general meeting, and the newly elected board is ready to rock and carry on with new things. Okay, there was one thing regarding the new emergency management powers that was discussed at the meeting. One of the things that came up was there's a 90-day recovery period that's been introduced to potentially restrict travel, prevent people from entering areas. The question was, who gets to decide this? Is it elected officials or unelected people that get to make the decision on whether to shut down and restrict travel in the future if it becomes necessary? Because that's one of the new things in the modernized, get the exact wording here, modernized new emergency management responsibilities for local governments. Thank you.
I will attempt to answer that, although I don't have the legislation in front of me right now. I can say that it's been our practice that when a restriction for travel would come into place, what I've seen is it's a province who either imposes it or at the very least would have to endorse it. Like many steps in our emergency operations, once we have an emergency in place, we need to get the authority from the province to take action. And I would see this as a subsequent follow-up to an action that the province would at the very least have to endorse. If I'm incorrect, we'll definitely come back to you. I see Karen's come online and she's in her office, so maybe Karen, you can help out.
Hey, sorry, I did just catch the tail end of that conversation. That I believe, and if I have information correct, which I can confirm that with you, that you would need a state and local emergency to be able to shut down travel, which that's something that elected officials can ask the province for, and it's approved by the province. So that would be one way to restrict travel in our area.
For those who may not have heard, because there's something with the volume that may have distorted, it sounded like the idea is that restrictions on travel might be dependent on the declaration of a local emergency first, which means that the elected officials would have first pass. I think if we can come back with a quick report at our next meeting to verify these things, that'd be great. Dr. Boyko, was there any follow-up?
No, I think that'd be great just to clarify that. The reason it comes from the farmers and the Ag Development Committee is how do we look after our animals if we're kicked out and not allowed to go back to our homes for 3 months? Because those are the powers that are getting put in there, and it has to be very clear on who's making the decisions in our local area. Thank you.
That's a very good point. Thank you for that, Dr. Boyko. Okay, could we have a motion to receive Dr. Boyko's report? Thank you, Dr. Roth, seconded by Dr. Sika. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, motion carried, thank you. Okay, that brings us into 10.3 member reports. So we'll start off with item A, 911 Corporation. Director Beckett is not here. Did anyone else attend? Director Siga?
Director Beckett was away, but the meeting was canceled, so no report.
That brings us to the Regional Library. Director Cote.
Sorry, takes me a minute to get back to the screen. No report. Their meeting is actually this Saturday. Thanks.
Thank you. Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce, Director Minions, you're still online?
I am, yes, no report.
I just came around, okay. And then next up is Air Quality Council, Port Alberni, Director Sparrow.
I have a report. I condensed down the report down to a few quick talking points here from the AQC. They're talking about air filters in your home. It's one of the big topics there. They call a MERV filter, MERV 13. Can remove 85% of particular matter in your house. And they're actually quite inexpensive compared to other ones. So don't go for the fancy ones, but go the one that have MERV 13 in them. They still say open burning is a significant issue in the Alberni Valley, and there's 3 avenues for improvement that exist to promote open burning smoke regulations through compliance, promote alternatives to wood chipping, which I think we can do through our fire smoke program at this time, and improve vending index information education and compliance. And they plan on doing this by using public service announcements through the radio, web or social media. They're hoping to help with ACRD, helping us on that. Facebook posts and Let's Connect ACRD. Other avenues for collaboration we're hoping for is a Alberni Fire Department, public message boards, or any other means they can get their words out with. So they'll be trying to access them. There's also 2 local citizen groups interested in climate change, the Alberni Climate Action, and Alberni Valley Transition Town Society. And they're looking to help give that. It could be beneficial for the AQC to collaborate with these 2 and other groups for initiatives in a common interest. And we had discussions at the board about rebates. The Clean BC rebate's a big one. It's a provincial rebate program. They get a multi-$1,000 rebates on your house for ventilation, insulation, windows, heat pumps, power, redoing your power supply, and also heat pump hot water conversion, which is not very popular. So they all exist if you want to. So they're going to try to promote that one too. So there's a bunch of rebate programs out there. They're hoping that the HRD would help collaborate with them on that to get the word out. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you for that. There we go. Next up is West Coast Aquatic Board. Director Steer?
Yeah, no meeting, no report, but just a conversation earlier at UBSIM actually with Director Mastrangelo and with staff around the potential for her taking over from my position at West Coast Aquatic, and I can maybe reach out to Director Mastrangelo offline to see if there's been any movement on that.
Thank you for that. That brings us to the AVICC, Director Cote.
Thank you. Jumping around on my screen here. So just a reminder that resolutions need to be coming in soon. Any suggestions of sessions that we'd like to see? Elections nominations need to be there, and also if there's any students that are interested in being applying for our grant that we have for student participation. And anything else you'd like to see happening at AVICC convention in April, please pass that along. That's it. We don't have another meeting until December. Thank you.
Daniel, you had a question?
If I could just add something along the lines of the resolutions for AVICC. Last Friday, we had executive directors and CAOs around the region meeting. And I believe it was Tofino that is going to be leading the charge on an AVICC resolution asking the province to offset costs with regard to medical assist calls in the fire departments. And I know that that is something that Director Roth has brought up in the past. And I believe that Ucluelet might be in the same situation. So I'll just put it on the radar that there's a high likelihood that we'll be coming back to the board, if for no other reason, just to support that resolution and offer our statistics around the volume of medical assist and the cost burden that has.
Thank you for that. Was there anything else, Director Cote? No? Okay, thank you. Next up is the Walk-in Public Advisory Group. Dr. Sparrow.
No, thank you for that. We had a meeting, but I have no talking points from them, so I will remain silent.
Thank you. Are there any other reports? All right, seeing none. Can we have a motion to receive the reports, please? Oh, sorry.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to report out that I attended the Ocean Protection Plan meeting for one day. They're going through public consultation. And I also attended the SOMAS Estuary Symposium. Provides a lot of information from mapping. It seems that I was one of the people around for the longest with the most information about things like mud snails in the estuary and that type of thing. So very happy to have been able to participate in that. And I also did the decolonization series. That was very interesting. If anybody has the opportunity to do that, I would highly recommend it. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. The decolonization series, was that through the OPP conference?
No, it was supported through the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Okay, any further reports? Seeing none, could we have a motion to receive the reports, please? Thank you, Dr. Roth, seconded by Dr. Siga. All of those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Alrighty, that brings us to unfinished business, of which there is none. And then finally, late business, and there's actually an item for late business. This has to do with the Long Beach Airport with fire flow pump station construction award. This sounds like Jenny. Oh, there you go. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. On a similar note as earlier, we have received grant funding for another project at the airport. This is not as good. It's only 65% funding, and it is from BCAP. This is for phase 2 of the Long Beach Airport Fire Flow Upgrade project. So we did the water main upgrade last year or the year before, and now we're looking to put in the pump station, which will allow us to make sure that we can send the water through in the case of a fire. We received $737,000 from BCAP in March, and we have had engineers working on detailed design and looking to get the equipment in place because they have given us a very short deadline, as they always do. So we have to get it done by March 31st, 2024. That is part of the reason why this is a late report, unfortunately. We have been working with BCAP on the funding because the prices have come in a little bit higher than our original cost estimate. I firmly believe that is because we are putting such a short timeline on these bids. So we're asking someone to come in and construct and have this done in the winter and done by March. So we did receive 2 bids. One was from Ridgeline Mechanical and one was from Gibson Brothers. We are recommending award to the low bid, which is Ridgeline Mechanical, of $1.2 million. We have engineering costs for that, as well as a contingency of 5% for a total project cost of $1.3 million. With the BCAP funding, as well as some of the gas tax or community, the community building fund, sorry, the new name is the gas tax money that we do have allocated, which is $100,000. We are very close to being able to afford that, but we are going to be short $32,000. The, I guess, good news, if you want to consider it that, is that because we are going to be constructing in the 2024 year, the money isn't allocated in the 2023 year, but we can do an allocation for the 2024 capital reserve to add 30,000. This will cover the entire project cost. So we have thought, we do consider this is slightly more than we had anticipated in spending. So we could decide not to proceed with the project, but then we would be giving up the BCAP funding. We will continue to talk with BCAP as we have to see if there is more funding available, but we do strongly recommend from a staff perspective that we still proceed with this. We can afford it. There is money in the reserve for 2024. And this is a very important project for the airport. We continue to manage to get so much of this infrastructure built and replaced with the grant funding. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Director Steer.
Thank you, Jenny, for the report. Yeah, I don't have any comments other than to make the recommendation unless there's other questions from the board.
All right, I can read that out for you. It says that the Alberni-Glasgow Regional District Board of Directors award the Long Beach Airport Fire Flow Pump Station construction contract to Ridgeline Mechanical Limited in the amount of $1,217,407.07, excluding GST. And further, that the ACRD Board of Directors authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the Long Beach Airport Fire Flow Pump Station construction contract on behalf of the Regional District. And moved or seconded by Director Siga.
I can second it, but I also have a question.
Okay, Director Siga, please go ahead.
Thank you. Does this project involve constructing a new well? Through the chair? No?
Through the chair? No, this is simply a pump station. So we have our existing wells that will continue to pump, but we have built this. This will be a pump station, which will just use the exact source water that we have at this time.
And through the chair, is the source water adequate for the needs of the airport, including all the new projects that are planned?
Through the chair, excellent question. We have recently completed water modeling and we are looking at development. We're going to be reaching our capacity at some point in the future. We will be able to do fire protection. So there's two levels of demand we look at, which is just your regular average day demand, peak day demand in the summer, which is a little different in an airport versus a residential area because we don't have a lot of housing demands. The water demands are actually quite low because it's typically mostly just industrial, commercial type of water use. But we do have massive reservoirs. So we're going to be able to meet our fire flow demands because we can feed those reservoirs. As we develop, we are going to hit a sort of a peak capacity. We have continued to have discussions with parks because their water system is relatively close to us. And we hope to continue that discussion in the future to look at secondary source for long-term development. We also can develop more wells as another option, although the water source there is hit and miss depending on where we're drilling those test wells.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us into item 13, which is question period, and I'm looking over the shoulder. There doesn't appear to be any open questions on Zoom. How about the email address?
No emails received. Thank you.
And just for those of you online, there's no one in the gallery, so I think we're all good. Okay, so moving on to in camera. We do have one item to discuss in camera. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read out and then move the motion to close the meeting because it includes the reasons why we're going in camera. And then we'll go into the in-camera agenda as presented. So this is a motion to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter under section 91F, law enforcement, if the board considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement of an enactment. So that's it. And I'll move that. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Ross. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor?